I'm going to introduce you to Daniel Rayborn and Nada Rayborn so that you will derive from their individual dictations a much deeper meaning and understanding. Some of you have the background, some of you would like to have it refreshed, and some of you may not have heard about it at all. So, what we know of the lives of Daniel and Nada Rayborn was recorded by Godfrey Ray King, Guy Ballard, in his book The Magic Presence. Godfrey and his wife Lotus were Saint Germain's messengers in the I Am activity beginning in the 1930s. Godfrey first met Daniel Rayborn in the summer of 1930. You were either in embodiment or out of embodiment at that time, so who knows, you might have been at the Royal Teton Retreat when these events took place. Even if you were in embodiment, you might have traveled there. Godfrey wrote in The Magic Presence, "My impression of Rayborn was very pleasant, for his whole attitude was one of harmony and kindliness. And at the same time, I felt that he was a man of strong character with a keen sense of honor. He had a finely shaped head, classic features, iron gray hair, and clear, piercing, blue-gray eyes. He stood very erect and was fully 6 feet 2 inches in height. The day after he met Daniel Rayborn, Godfrey accompanied him to his ranch in Wyoming. This ranch was one of Daniel's mining properties. Godfrey later remarked about one of Daniel's mining operations that he had never seen so fine a camp of men. He wrote, everything possible had been done for their comfort and convenience. Everywhere it was plainly evident that Rayborn was much loved by his men. The entire atmosphere was one of harmonious cooperation, and there was a total absence of all coarse or undesirable elements. At the ranch, Godfrey met Daniel's 2 children, his 18-year-old son Rex and his 16-year-old daughter Nada. Rex and Nada had remarkable singing voices, and they performed for Godfrey after dinner one night. That evening, Nada told Godfrey about her mother, whose name was also Nada. As you know, this Nada, Mrs. Nada Rayborn, is not the Nada who is the Chohan of the 6th ray. She said she and her brother had inherited their voices from their mother, who had been an opera singer. Nada, the daughter, went on to tell Godfrey that her mother and father were twin rays, or twin flames. Nada said, Mother's father was an Englishman, and her mother, who was educated in England, was the daughter of an Arab sheikh. 2 years ago, Mother was taken ill and passed on within a few weeks, although everything possible was done to save her life. During the last 4 weeks, she received transcendent revelations that have explained many things to us. Saint Germain first came to Mother one night at the beginning of her career in grand opera. She had been singing only a few months when one evening she became almost speechless with stage fright. She was in her dressing room shortly before the performance when a frantic fear seized her, making her forget everything. Saint Germain stepped through in his tangible body, introduced himself, and touched her forehead with the fingers of his right hand. Instantly, all nervousness left, the memory of her part returned, and she was calm and at ease. That night, her success was tremendous, and it continued to increase, becoming brilliant beyond her fondest dreams. He told her she had earned the right to the protecting presence of the Ascended Masters, and from that time on, it would be permanent. We should pause here and realize there is a time when we may have earned the protecting presence of the Ascended Masters, and when that protecting presence becomes permanent. We should seek for that protecting presence. We should tailor our lives, our thoughts, our meditations, our prayers to that end, that we might know that protecting presence, and that we may have earned the right to have it as a permanent manifestation in our lives. Just remember that we are talking about real people who were embodied on earth, who wore the same kinds of bodies that we wore, lived in the United States, in a neighboring state of Wyoming, and that they received training directly from Saint Germain, no doubt because of many previous lifetimes of their loyalty to him and to his cause. Everyone here can earn this. You know what you cannot do and still enjoy the protection of the Ascended Masters and have that be permanent. You know what you must do to earn that. I need not tell you. You know, it's just a question of how much do you want that closeness to the Ascended Masters? What are you willing to give up for that? And how are you willing to maintain your harmony, your compassion and kindness and love toward all people? Saint Germain described the man that she was to marry and the son and daughter who were to come to her. After this, he came at regular intervals and taught her many inner laws, which she was able to comprehend and apply with astonishing results. As we read the major works from the I Am activity, the 3 volumes, and as we know the teachings the Ascended Masters have given us, we realize that we know many inner laws ourselves, and that we are able to comprehend them. The test here is to apply those laws with astonishing results. This everyone here can do. You just need to decide to do it. Shortly after I was born, he explained that she had work to do on the higher planes of life, and that he would always hold Rex and me in his great loving, protecting care. Father, Saint Germain said, was not sufficiently awakened to be told of the higher law until about a year ago, when Saint Germain came to him. After dinner the next evening, Daniel Rayborn met with Godfrey, Rex, and Nada. He told them that Saint Germain had awakened him at 4 a.m. that morning and taught him for at least 2 hours. Saint Germain told Daniel that he would soon make his ascension. In a dictation given through Mark Prophet on October 14, 1963, the Ascended Master Daniel Rayborn explained how his contact with Saint Germain prior to his ascension propelled him forward on the spiritual path. There is no one here who does not have some contact with Saint Germain. Your very love for him establishes that. You can increase and intensify that tie by directing your thoughts to Saint Germain when you are preparing for sleep and when you are taking your leave of your body to go in soul travel to the retreats where you are guided to be. You can have all these things that the Rayborns had. This is why this is such a wonderful account and record for all of us. Saint Germain will propel you forward. But you must come not with a begging bowl, but with a platter full of the fruits of many lifetimes of service. If you will do that, you will know this companionship. And so in this dictation, the Ascended Master Daniel Rayborn said, "It was such a wonderful experience to me when first I came into contact with Saint Germain, when I realized that he was a vibrant living person, a great Ascended Master, one who could come from the great cosmic ethers with the swiftness of blue lightning and make himself known and felt. The tangibility of this great Master flooded my being, and I was wholly aware of the fact that I was in the presence of great divinity. But the one particular quality which he imparted unto me above all others, which floods my soul at this moment with wonder, is the fact that God within me had the same desire of transformation as was resident within the being of Saint Germain." This is a stupendous statement. Apply it to yourself. The fact that God within me, this is in every one of you, had the same desire of transformation as was resident within the being of Saint Germain. This closes the distance between us and any Ascended Master. Think of the beauty of the God that beats your heart, the threefold flame that is pulsating within you, that leaps in the desire to be multiplied and to be increased by our decrees and our meditations. Continuing from his dictation, "He made known unto me that it was the wonder of God's love that would impart to me also the full stature of an ascended master. He engendered in me great faith and courage, so that I had hope when faced with many vicissitudes in the business world and in family situations, that the great light of God would safely pull me through all those conditions, and that ultimately I would be given the gift of my ascension. That's the end of the quote from that dictation delivered by Mark Prophet. In that same dictation, Daniel Rayborn taught us a mantra we can use in times of trial. He said, "Many of you who are at times afflicted by elements of doubt and shadow must recognize the constancy of the sun of your being that shines behind each cloud. You have heard it said that every cloud has a silver lining, but these words seem poor consolation at times to individuals during their moments of trial. Men must recognize the need not to necessarily make decisions during moments of trial, but to wait until the clouds have rolled away and the cycle has passed. The words, 'This too shall pass,' are a fiat of authority that Saint Germain taught to me as an old mantra. When correctly understood and applied to life, it tends to act as an eraser, to wipe the slate of life clean, and to remove unwanted pictures from the consciousness. 'This too shall pass,' stated 3 times and followed by 'The light of God never fails,' 3 times, creates a mantra of Christ consciousness to clean the consciousness of unwanted conditions and bring forth a positive victory over negative elements that may at times be projected into the consciousness of mankind. Let us give this together. 3 times, 'This too shall pass.' 3 times, 'The light of God never fails.' Together. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. The light of God never fails. The light of God never fails. The light of God never fails. And to this we add, and the beloved mighty I Am Presence is that light. This was a very amazing find for me in this lecture as we have brought forth Mark Prophet's dictation of Daniel Rayborn. Because when I was very early in my teens, I decided to make my motto, "This too shall pass." My soul knew that I was going through karma, even though I hadn't heard of karma by that time. And it always gave me courage through those years. And I can see now that it is the fiat that came forth in this dictation, that it clears the slate. When correctly understood and applied to life, it tends to act as an eraser to wipe the slate of life clean, to remove unwanted pictures from the consciousness. This is actually what this mantra did for me. I wrote it all over my textbooks when I was in college and in high school. And I always would say to myself, this thing you're going through right now, this will pass. There will be better days. And then I would give this mantra. I didn't have any IM books at that time. I had nothing to go by. But it really was a sustaining presence as I went forth to make my way in the world. So please use this, because it really is a clearance. You are declaring that this human creation, this human nonsense will pass, and the glory of the Lord will be before you. So returning to the story in the magic presence, a few days after Saint Germain had awakened Daniel Rayborn and instructed him, Saint Germain spent 3 days with the Rayborns and Godfrey at his retreat, called the Cave of Symbols, near the Rayborn Ranch. Saint Germain gave them a tour of the retreat and showed them marvelous inventions, including a device called the atomic accelerator. The atomic accelerator, Saint Germain said, was a mechanical way of quickening the atomic vibration of the human body and assisting to raise it into the pure electronic body, which Jesus referred to as the seamless garment or the bridal garment of the Spirit. It will be used a great deal in the future to assist in raising the physical flesh atom into its divine purity and structure, the electronic body. This body remains forever eternally youthful, beautiful, strong, perfect, and free from every conceivable limitation. The electronic body. In this body, individuals can and do function wherever they choose in the universe, for in it there are no barriers of time, place, space, or condition. This amazing real physical machine is a mighty healing agent, as well as a means by which the body can be raised. It also quickly establishes perfect equilibrium in the brain structure. And through the balancing of the mental and emotional activities of the human being, dishonesty and crime of every kind can be prevented. It was used on Atlantis, although it was less perfect. There is no invention or discovery that has or ever will bless mankind to so great a degree. During Rayborn's visit to the Cave of Symbols, Saint Germain asked him to sit in the atomic accelerator, which was aglow with currents of light. Godfrey wrote, "In an instant the light within Rayborn's body began to increase, and his face revealed great joy. Within the light around him were particles of substance continually rising, as the impurities in his physical body were thrown off and consumed. This lasted about 10 minutes. Then I saw his hair gradually return to its natural color, a dark brown, and his face became radiant and youthful. The light within the chair gradually disappeared, and the laboratory was again as usual." Saint Germain extended his hand to Mr. Rayborn, and he stepped down lightly, as if scarcely conscious of any weight. For more than an hour, the radiance about his face and the brilliant light within his eyes was most remarkable. After this experience, Rayborn said, "Words can never describe the marvels I have experienced, and for the first time in my life I am beginning to know the real meaning of life. That life is the life eternal, the life everlasting." The next day, Rayborn once again sat in the atomic accelerator. "A dazzling blue-white light blazed forth crystal clear," wrote Godfrey. "In perhaps 10 minutes his flesh looked perfectly transparent. Slowly a current of vivid blue moved up his spine and met the combined currents of the pineal gland, pituitary body, and the base of the brain, forming into a dazzling golden light encircled by the most vivid blue I have ever seen. Then, by the very power of his own light, he arose and stepped forth from the chair, and as he did so, he seemed to float rather than walk." Godfrey, Rex, and Nada were also allowed to sit in the atomic accelerator for a few minutes. Then Saint Germain took them all to another chamber, where he unveiled a mirror. "This is a cosmic mirror," he told them, "in which any individual having reached a certain height of attainment may see his complete series of lives, the cause and effect of his conscious activity, and how the gradual process of mastery is attained. Then, seeing the divine plan of his future, he will understand how to increase his power of service and usefulness by consciously expanding the love, light, wisdom, and power of the mighty I Am Presence through himself." End of quote by Saint Germain. Saint Germain allowed Daniel Rayborn to look into the mirror. Immediately a spot of sapphire blue light appeared upon the milky white surface of the mirror, and steadily expanded until the mirror became crystal clear, wrote Godfrey. The screen revealed Rayborn's experiences, including even those of his present life and our recent association. Saint Germain said, "You see that an extension has been granted to this good brother until he has finished certain outer work, and the children are through school. These life extensions are only given where it is possible to raise the atomic structure of the physical body into the electronic. When this takes place, he will be united with his beautiful twin ray, the mother of Rex and Nada. Then will they reveal their true service through the mighty presence of the I Am, as their radiance grows brighter and brighter." Then Saint Germain prophesied, "At an appointed time they will come forth with their ascended master authority, and serve in their visible, tangible, ascended bodies, holding positions as great teachers of the light in high government offices, being direct messengers of the Most High, living God." This was to take place after their ascensions. Saint Germain said that 1 year from that day, on July 28, 1931, they would all meet again in the Cave of Symbols, and Daniel Rayborn would make his ascension from that cave of symbols. At Christmas time, St. Germain met the Rayborns, Godfrey and Bob and Pearl Singleton, in Washington, D.C. Bob was the superintendent of Rayborn's mining operations. He and his sister Pearl were also pupils of St. Germain. On the night of December 21st, winter solstice, St. Germain told them he wanted them to attend a concert on Christmas Eve. He said 2 of the performers would be indisposed, and he would arrange for Rex, Nada, Bob, and Pearl to perform in their place. On Christmas Eve, the 4 sang as a quartet, and Rex and Nada also performed solos. After they had finished their performance, the manager stepped to the front of the stage and announced his surprise for the closing number. "Allow me to present our guest artist of the evening," he said, singing, "I Come on the Wings of Light, prima donna Nada." The mother of Nada and Rex entered, wearing a gown glittering with jewels, wrote Godfrey. Her own beauty far transcended that of the gown she wore. The applause and greeting from the audience was tremendous. She raised her hand for silence. The audience responded instantly, and she began. She sang with tremendous power and glory as her radiation was released to flood out over the audience and the city of Washington in blessing. At the close of her song, the audience was gripped in silence for a few seconds, and then burst forth, showering their deep appreciation and joy in loving gratitude upon her. They called for her again and again. After she had sung the song for the 3rd time, she raised her hand for silence and spoke to them. "Your joy and gratitude is so sweet, so sincere, that I shall sing for you something I love, which expresses my feeling for you. It is called, I Love You." In this, her voice took on a beauty and power that acted like magic. She sang as only an ascended master can sing, and it was no wonder the audience, in its enthusiasm and appreciation, tried to call her back again and again. However, at a signal from St. Germain, the final curtain was lowered. St. Germain, Nada, her family, and Bob and Pearl rushed off to a hotel. In a few moments, reporters besieged the place, wanting to know who the singer was, Godfrey wrote. St. Germain stepped to the door and greeted them. "Prima donna Nada," he said, "is the wife of a Western mining man, Daniel Rayborn, and the 2 soloists are her son and daughter. That is all," and he dismissed them. Later, St. Germain told them, "Tonight I have shown you the higher ideal of entertainment. It is not only very enjoyable, but tremendously uplifting because of the magic presence whose limitless power it releases. You see, when the proper channel is opened, there is no limit to the blessings an audience may receive wherever the condition is made possible." That evening, Nada told her family, Godfrey, Bob, and Pearl, of her experiences as an ascended lady master and some of the most important lessons she had learned. Nada said that after her passing, 12 ascended masters, including St. Germain, had surrounded her. You can see those 12 masters standing on the 12 lines of the clock. They showed her how she could raise the atomic structure of her physical body into the pure electronic body. She said, as the process of raising gradually took place, I became more and more aware of blazing light filling my entire body. I felt the most marvelous radiant energy surge in and through me, sweeping away every vestige of resistance and imperfection and quickening my consciousness. I became more and more aware of my mighty I Am presence until finally it stood before me, visible, tangible, and very real. Steadily and powerfully I felt my physical body drawn into and enveloped by my glorious God Self. And when I stepped out of the cemetery, I could scarcely realize how transcendent I had become. The old human limited activities of my consciousness were raised into that alert sense of freedom and unlimited use of wisdom and power. Now that I was aware of this greater activity, I was shown very clearly that I must put it to use. Then came a still fuller sense of the freedom, beauty, joy, and service that I must render to those who still remain unascended. My first desire was that I might know more of these ascended masters who had so lovingly ministered to me. Instantly, one after another stood before me, and without a word being spoken, conveyed their names and thoughts to me. With this marvelous thought language, there came certain attendant pictures in color and the true interpretation of them. My first experiences that seemed to me so marvelous proved to be but fragmentary compared with what has been revealed since my ascension into this far greater and more wonderful activity of life. You, beloved ones, do not realize how fortunate you are in having the blessing of the wonderful atomic accelerator, one marvelous result of the love and work of our blessed Saint Germain. Great has been his love, his service, and the gift of himself to humanity. The beauty and rapid progress of each of you is due to your sincere and intense gratitude. Gratitude to God and the universe for every single small and great gift you receive daily is truly the key to everlasting life, the constant celebration of that virtue of gratitude. It is the certain pathway to great heights of attainment and the easiest method by which to achieve every good thing. It is because humanity has forgotten to be grateful to life for all the blessings upon this earth that it has shut the door to peace and become bound by the chains of its own selfishness. The law of life is to give, for only by giving oneself can one expand. One of the tremendous blessings of the ascended state is the entire absence of any criticism or condemnation of human frailties or mistakes. If the student of light will train himself to forget everything that is useless or that is in any way undesirable, he will make rapid progress. For the student to drag after him unpleasant memories is but one of the many ways by which he creates over and over again the same experiences of misery from which he is really seeking to be free. Nada also spoke of her service as an ascended lady master in a dictation delivered on May 13, 1962 through Mark Prophet. She said, "Some of you will recall that I was a prima donna and did a great deal of work in connection with opera. My song today is a song of the spirit, and my voice may be heard at night in the various retreats when the members of the Great White Brotherhood are assembled together. For ever so frequently at the request of beloved Saint Germain and beloved Daniel Rayborn and my son and daughter and others of the ascended host, I still stand before the multitude of the host ascended and give a rendering to my own presence and to its heart. I pour forth my melodic interpretations of the universe, and I rejoice continually in the privilege of so doing. Your talents, beloved ones, are never removed from you by your ascension in the light. They are enhanced, and limitation is removed from them." End of quote. The next summer, as Saint Germain had foretold, Daniel Rayborn made his ascension. He went to the Cave of Symbols, where for several days he prepared for his ascension in what Saint Germain called the Chamber of Light. Nada, Pearl, Rex, and Bob arrived at the Cave of Symbols on July 26. Godfrey wrote, "During the 27th, many of the ascended masters came, singly and in groups, until all who were to take part in the work had arrived. At 11 o'clock that night, we were escorted into the electrical chamber where the marvelous atomic accelerator was waiting. As we entered the chamber, the light within it was intense, yet it held tiny points of more dazzling light that darted to and fro in the atmosphere continually. Rayborn seated himself in the chair, and the 24 present formed a circle about the accelerator. Saint Germain standing directly behind him, and I just in front. Nada, his twin ray, stood within the circle. When all were ready, Saint Germain commanded the individual attention of each one to be held steady upon the presence and supremacy of the I Am and that of the Master Jesus. Suddenly, like a flash of lightning, a circle of the most intense, dazzling white light surrounded us, drawing steadily toward the chair until it was only about 10 feet across. The light within Daniel Rayborn expanded and met the circle of light without. As they touched, he began to rise slowly to a distance of about his own height above the accelerator, the light within him continuing to increase. Nada, his own twin ray, rose also and drew toward him, passing within the smaller circle of light. They met in divine embrace for a moment. The next instant, the face of the Master Jesus shone out in an aura of gold, pink and blue above them. Inclining their heads toward us and smiling radiantly, they looked upward as a great ray of intense white light descended. It enveloped them both in its protecting radiance, blessing their glorious union and hiding them from our sight while they passed beyond all care and limitation into their eternal perfection of being, clothed in bodies of everlasting light, the robe of immortality that shines brighter than the sun at noonday. The Ascended Master Daniel Rayborn described what he experienced in that glorious moment of his ascension in his dictation of October 14, 1963. Oh, the glory and the surge of power, the supreme blessing, the contact with the angelic host, but above all was the great feeling of union with one's own mighty I Am presence. I recall the thought passing through my consciousness that it was similar to standing outside during the noontime and gazing up to the heavens and recognizing that not a star was visible, and then suddenly being transferred to the hour of midnight and seeing that the entire sky was full of beautiful points of light. For I became aware of regions of the cosmos not even thought of or conceived by me before. And I felt a kinship with wonderful individual minds and hearts, a reunion with those whom I had long suffered absence from. I knew on the instant that nothing in this world was significant or worthy of anything by comparison to the ascension. The final thought that passed through my mind as I rose upward into the great light to be absorbed was, oh, if I could only tell them. Oh, if I could only tell them. And I realized afterward by reflection that this thought has filled the mind and consciousness of everyone who has ascended. For all have felt, oh, if I could only tell them. This is the desire that we feel, to reach down into human consciousness with all of its density, its almost suffocating outer conditions, and to say, oh, do put all that you have into your search for your divinity, that you might receive the blessing of the ascension. Daniel Rayborn concluded that dictation with a special gift. He asked that a golden chair be placed before the altar. Then he said, I call to the great divine director for the resurgent energies of Christ's accomplishment to be magnified, and a beam of direct light substance to pass through the substance of this chair and to energize it for the space of 1 hour. Ladies and gentlemen, we have received permission from the Great White Brotherhood for an action of 1% radiation of the atomic accelerator to be anchored in this chair. We ask you to share it with one another for the coming hour. That is the end of the quote by Daniel Rayborn. I remember when a chair was placed in the Dodge House, a hotel in Washington, D.C. that no longer exists, where we held our conferences when we lived in Washington. And this was announced, and the chair was placed in front of the lectern. And for a period of 1 hour, everyone who attended the class sat down on the chair for maybe 1 minute or 30 seconds, and that person would get up and the next person would sit down in the chair. So it's happened before, it can happen again. However, if it's only here for an hour, it's going to be like musical chairs, right? So let's pray for such a dispensation. At this point, I'd like to prepare for the dictations of Daniel Rayborn and Nada Rayborn. Thank you very much.